Welcome back to the training, Creating a Trauma-Informed Library. We're still in Module 1, Trauma 101. This is Lesson 3, How Trauma Impacts the Future. In the 1990s, Kaiser conducted a study on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Most of these experiences are what would generally be considered little t traumas. They included emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, substance abuse in the household, mental illness in the household, parental separation or divorce, an incarcerated household member. The study found that the more ACEs someone experienced early in life, the more likely they were to have negative outcomes later in life. ACEs can even impact how the brain develops, particularly stress responses, which means that ACEs can also impact areas of life that may not seem related to adverse life events. Of course, none of those outcomes are guaranteed. With proper support and engagement and positive resources, negative impacts can be mitigated or prevented. Libraries can contribute to supporting people and being positive resources within the community. No discussion about trauma is complete without discussing intergenerational trauma. This is trauma that is inherited from generation to generation, impacting families and communities through time. Intergenerational trauma can come from generational systemic inequities, such as the effects of racism, or from experiences that occur in single generations, such as surviving a war or genocide. Events such as losing a loved one typically do not result in intergenerational trauma. So let's take a look at how intergenerational trauma can impact people. Generation A, experiencing war. While war is often preceded by political and economic turmoil, often resulting in violence before war is officially declared, experiencing war impacts families and entire communities on a level that can result in trauma through future generations. Not only that, but war often results in the displacement of people, which can add levels of trauma to already traumatized individuals. The stress caused by targeted violence like war or genocide and the following experiences of being displaced from one's home and potentially entire country can result in not only psychological changes, but can also result in changes to one's genetic makeup. These changes can heighten stress responses, and the genetic changes can be passed down to future generations. Generation B, survivors' children. The generation raised by survivors were raised by parents and guardians that had experienced some of the worst of humanity. Clearly, such an experience will impact parenting. Not only that, but the children of survivors can have altered genetics, like their parents, that heighten their stress response. Their early environment and their genetics together increase their risk of experiencing events that overwhelm their ability to cope, trauma, and having lasting negative impacts of that trauma. Generation C, survivors' grandchildren. The genetic changes continued into survivors' grandchildren, since the gene changes are unlikely to revert back to their original state. This generation was also raised by people who were more likely to have traumatic experiences that had lasting negative impacts. Therefore, this generation was also more likely to experience trauma and have lasting negative impacts. It is important to note in this discussion that intergenerational trauma and trauma in general does not doom someone to a life filled with further trauma and terrible health impacts. Rather, trauma predisposes people to be more sensitive to adverse experiences. With proper support and resources, people who experience trauma of all types can live happy, fulfilling lives and enjoy good health. We're back to our resources and additional learning page. Feel free to click on any of the links to learn more about the topics covered in this lesson. Otherwise, I will see you next lesson.